Well, thanks for tuning in to my next series on tube amp do-it-yourself construction. And I was going to highlight a couple of builds that I've done and what my next one is going to be, which is a budget 300B build, a direct heated triode single-ended amplifier. And using those terms in budget usually don't go together, but we're going to try to do one as reasonably priced as we can and still get a good sound out of it. This here was my first amp that I built. This was a Blueglow kegger thing that we've all, or most of you, probably seen the series that Mark did, building this KT88 single-ended amplifier that runs in ultralinear mode. I did mine a little different. I used a schematic that Kegger posted using a 6EJ7 driver tube, and I put two of them in just because I don't like really the look of having one driver tube. It's got some 25 watt 5K Edcor output transformers into 8 ohm speakers, Edcor power transformer, and Edcor choke with a 5AR4 rectifier. It was a good sounding amplifier once I rolled the tubes and got some good sounding complement of tubes together in it, as well as playing with the different ultralinear and triode modes to see which one I thought sounded best. These two switches here, one of them is triode and ultralinear, and the other one switches between two different values of the shade feedback resistor, so I could A/B listen to different resistors, and that's when I learned how much difference the value of that resistor makes in the sound of the amplifier. This was a great learning experience, but there were some things about it that I wasn't crazy about. One, to me, the aesthetics of having these little tiny driver tubes and these giant output tubes just looks kind of funny. I know a lot of amps are built that way. I just prefer octal driver tubes. I just think they look better. The other thing is this amp has pretty low input sensitivity, and to be driven to full power, it needs 2 volts RMS driven on the input, which requires a preamplifier, which I don't really want to use. As you can see, it's got a volume control on it. I want to use this as an integrated amplifier that I can just hook up my CD player, my phono stage to it, and use it. And yes, it has enough power to drive my RP600M clip speakers, but it's a lot of wasted power. And this thing puts off a lot of heat too, which in the South, something we don't really need in the summertime. So, as you can see, it's a big amplifier too. So my next project was I designed this little guy that uses 6 SQ7 drivers, which are old AM radio tubes that have a triode with 2 diodes in them, that we aren't using the diodes, but they're very, very linear tubes, which made me think that looking at the data sheet on it, I knew those would be good sounding tubes in an audio amplifier. It uses a 5V4 rectifier, and then it uses, these are 6CA7Z tubes with the black stuff in it, and I think not only do they sound good, I think they really look cool, these little kind of mini KT88 bottles. When I first put it together, I was using these JJ EL34s, and they sound very, very similar to what these 6CA7Zs sound like. I did try some regular 6CA7s, I tried some KT77s, and none of them sound as good as these or these. These have a little more detail, probably sound better running a CD through it. These sound a little smoother. I think they sound better with my vinyl preamp. Anyway, as you can see, this is a lot smaller amplifier smaller output transformers, the whole footprint's smaller, and it puts out at 1 volt input the same wattage that this giant amplifier does. And so, given how similar these sound and how much more efficient this amplifier is, and honestly I think it sounds a little better than this one does, this is my main amp now. This is what I listen to all the time. So when I started researching doing a 300B build, I didn't really think about like this amplifier and the parts that were in it. I was researching like what kind of transformers people are using with them. I was looking at the power that is required with a 300B to really sound good. And when I started looking at the specs, that they like around 400 volts. They like being run about 80 milliamps. They like either a 3 to 5K output transformers. I realized that I've got all the parts right here. And this is an amplifier that I'm really not using anymore, that I built this one. And so I've decided to strip this amp down, use these 5K, 25 watt, easily handle the 80 milliamps, because that's what these are running at, 200 milliamp choke, 200 milliamp power transformer. And as you can see, it has dual 6.3 volt, 3 amp windings that can power the filaments of all the tubes. It has the 5 volt, 3 amp winding that to work the rectifier. And then it's 375, 0, 375, which should put out right near the voltage I need once I get everything set up. I've already got double chokes. There's another choke underneath here, so I've got a lot of good filtration, very clean DC, which will work really good with a 300B. And the schematic I'm going to be using is an old J.C. Morrison, which here's what it looks like. And this is basically what I'm going to be going off of. I may be switching a few values around once I get it put together to get the voltages where I need it, and also to get the input sensitivity where I want to see it, so that the amp doesn't require a preamp. I want to build it as an integrated amp. The other thing I like about this is it uses 6 SN7 driver tubes, which I happen to have about a dozen different good new old stock of that type of tube that I've been wanting to put together an amp to run it with. And a 300B needs a lot of drive, and this is a direct coupled 6SN7 that doesn't have a coupling cap between the sections, so it'll put out a lot of drive, and I can adjust the second section to really drive it if I need to. I originally wanted to design this with a 6SN7, but realized that one section of a 6SN7 wasn't enough drive, and 2 sections would probably be too much, and that's why I went with these 6 SQ7s. The other parts I have in here that are really nice, I've got this little, oh, this thing's so heavy. I've got this little meter here that shows the cathode current, and you can switch back and forth between which tube you're measuring, which will be nice to use with the 300B. And I've got all the jacks, I've got the power connectors, I've got the audio note potentiometer. So I've got really nice stuff in this amp, and I hate that it's just sitting here wasted, and it would be pretty silly for me to go out and buy duplicates of these parts when I'm not using this amp. At some point, once I get done with it, I may end up going with some higher end output transformers just to see what those sound like, if I like the way this 300B sounds. But for now, especially since I'm trying to do this on a budget, we're going to stick with this Edcor iron and see how cheaply we can put together a nice sounding 300B. So I'm going to have to order some parts, and I'm not going to try to reuse this chassis. I think it would be too crowded up here to try to put the 300Bs and cram these 6S and 7s up here in the front, and I may want to do a little bit different layout of some of the components, especially the stuff underneath. And so gonna get some parts ordered. May go with a little fancier chassis on this one. We'll see. But stay tuned. If you enjoy this video or think you would want to watch this series, please subscribe to my channel so you get updates when I start uploading the build videos. And like this video. And I think this is going to be another really fun build of something that I haven't seen a lot of build videos trying to do, a low-cost 300B amp. Thanks for watching.